Oh, there she is. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm good. We're going to give it a few more minutes. I don't see my co-chair here, so I just want to give folks a little time. We'll wait till like 2:05 or so, and we'll get started. But thank you. Hi, everyone. We're just going to give a few more minutes for others to trickle in.
Sorry, Representative, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. We'll get started. And if others jump in and they're late, that's absolutely fine. It's good to see you all. I'm Representative Moira Rader, as most of you already know that. And I just was saying earlier, I want to be really thoughtful of everyone's time today. I'm sure it's a busy time. And thank you for being flexible with moving this to a different time and day. Just as my colleague here, Representative Corpus, understands, our lives are not our own right now in session, so schedules get changed very quickly. So I thank you for being flexible. And I do actually have to jump off around 2:45 to get to a commitment at 3 here in district. So we're going to make the best use of our time. And what I wanted to do today is really focus in again on some of the tasks before us. And one of those we know is around the tier two interventions. And so I'm just pulling up my computer again, my page again here with our tasks. And the reason I wanted to focus in on this is I was connected with a really wonderful colleague and friend, Jennifer Scoggin, who lives here in Guilford. And she connected me with our guest today, Rachel Gabriel. And that's why you see her in her little square right there on our camera. And Rachel is here to kind of walk us through the tier two intervention study that we're working on. But specifically, I want to explain why she's here and her expertise in this area. So, Rachel, I'm going to read your bio. So, just give me a second here. So, Rachel Gabriel is professor of literacy education at UConn and director of the Reading Language Arts Center. She is author of more than 50 referred articles and author or editor of 7 books for literacy teachers, leaders, and education researchers. Rachel currently teaches courses for educators and doctoral students pursuing specialization in literacy and is editor-in-chief of The Reading Teacher. A former teacher and reading specialist, Rachel's research is focused on literacy instruction, leadership and intervention, as well as policies related to teacher development and evaluation. Her current projects investigate how educators and school leaders build collective capacity, state literacy policies, and discipline-specific literacy instruction. So Rachel is the guru, and I'm Rachel. I'm so grateful that Jen connected us, and we've been meaning to do this, I feel like, for a very long time outside of this commission. So um, I'm grateful that you're here with us. I shared with Rachel kind of the tasks that our subcommittee is dealing with, specifically around tier two interventions. And so, Rachel, I really just wanted to open it up to you in seeing kind of what we're being tasked with. Share a little bit of your background and how we can best come at those kind of subtasks that we have in there.
Sure. Thank you. This is great. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for your time today. So as the director of the Reading Language Arts Center, we host a reading clinic every other year because as we train folks that are getting their 102s and 097s, so becoming remedial reading teachers and literacy consultants, which everywhere else in the world is just called a reading coach. And so in that capacity, I still get to work with students, meaning K-12 students. I do outside evaluations when schools are having trouble figuring out exactly what to do for the reading side of things. So I get to work with students in that capacity. And then I've been working with districts for the last 15 years or so and evaluating their MTSS or RTI systems and rebuilding them with a range of different kinds of districts. And I do that in Connecticut, but also outside of Connecticut. So I have kind of a sense of what's possible within our, statute, and also what's possible in other kinds of settings. So I've tried to think a little bit about the idea of like if something could happen for tier two, what would it be? And I put together a couple slides for you because I wanted you to just see some of the pictures that I think about when I think about this question. So I'm sorry to do this to you in the middle of the day on a Thursday, but I'm going to share my screen.
Are you able to do that? I want to
I
make sure
don't
we
know.
can
Yes, it looks like
access.
I am. Sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. Here we go. All right. So I just tried to think about um, the broad strokes of your kind of the ABCD that you're tasked with addressing. So like if I zoom way out, like what's the whole deal with tier two? It's supposed to just be intensified instruction. And the intensification is supposed to happen over one, two, or three things. Or all three, but it has to be at least one or it doesn't count as intensified. And I think the challenge, so if we're thinking about benefits on the left and barriers on the right, is that it's really easy for schools to create systems that skip over all of the potential benefits, and then tier two doesn't work at all. So intensified instruction for students that need additional instruction or practice, and those are different. Some people just need more time, some people need more or different instruction, and being able to tell the difference means the difference between students who make growth in tier two and students who either stay in tier two for years and years and years, or who stay in tier two until they're moved to tier three, until they're moved on and on. So intensified instruction could be more time, and most schools are okay with like scheduling more time. But then what happens during that time matters. The practice could be more personalized and the teaching could be more personalized. And that means literally the person giving the instruction is giving feedback that is more personalized to the student and modeling and examples that are more personalized to the student. I'm trying to choose my words really carefully when I say this to demonstrate that it is currently impossible to do more personalized feedback, modeling, and instruction unless you are a human. So AI in a computer can tell you what you did wrong, but they don't know why you did it wrong. They don't know the patterning of it, and they don't know necessarily how to give you personally feedback that is going to move you along in an accelerated way. Um, a computer program could train another computer program how to read, but can't train a human. And we do not yet have a study where they successfully do. And so I do see a lot of folks using um, programs that kids are doing on computers for tier two because they have so many kids in tier two or because they don't have interventionists. And it really kind of violates the whole point of tier two in terms of it being personalized to the learner. On the right-hand side, the barriers. One of the studies I'm going to show you on the next slide was really a deep dive in Tennessee at this idea of like coherence with the curriculum. The challenge with tier two is it happens in addition to classroom instruction. And when it happens and it's not coherent with classroom instruction, so different kinds of text, different prompts, different strategies, different, the incoherence seems not to add up. So if you've got one program for tier one and you have another program for tier two, or you have a program for tier one and no particular program for tier two, then it doesn't seem like that extra time actually means anything. The other challenge, of course, is that expertise matters in terms of personalizing that practice and that teaching. And if if school leaders are assigning paras or long-term subs or folks that don't have significant expertise in reading, then they are probably getting less expert instruction than they had in tier one instead of more expert instruction than they had in tier one. And as you all probably know, just from like the conversation around literacy, it actually really does matter exactly what the teachers say and do, like to the word, like the prompts that we give them and the way that we correct or don't correct errors and the way that we notice patterns. Like it really actually does matter when it comes to reading. And so this is something that is often kind of farmed out to folks that can manage the volume of bodies, but not necessarily folks that can manage the complexity of the task for a range of reasons. We can talk a little more about that later. Whenever we do pull out for any reason at all, there's a social and an academic cost to it. You're always missing something. In elementary, we are less worried about it only because there is so much more flexibility in the schedule, but it becomes more and more of a challenge the older kids get and the more specialized they are sort of, what do they call that? Departmentalized their schedules get. And that I think is why we see pull-out intervention becomes less and less effective because its cost goes up over time. So the cost of missing class or the cost of missing an elective, the cost of not being with your peers for a first grader is present but low, and for a ninth grader is really, really expensive. So that intervention better be the greatest thing that happened since sliced bread because it has to make up for a significant expense that it takes on someone's academic experience. And then the other thing that is, sort of breaks the logic of the whole, like in tier two intervention, you get more time, more expert, more personalized practice and instruction. There are very few opportunities for people who are expert to deepen their expertise once they're certified. So if you've got a literacy coach, you've got an interventionist, sometimes the literacy coach will provide PD for the interventionist. No one provides PD for the literacy coach. They maybe go to a conference once a year that is about lots of things, not just about this. If your literacy coach is the one that is providing the intervention or the instruction or designing it for someone else to provide, same thing. And I think the difference here, it just depends on the size of the district. If you've got someone overseeing a bunch of tutor types versus someone delivering it themselves, really just depends on like how big your district is and how they have staffed up for it. So once if you do have people that have the knowledge and expertise and have demonstrated that in some way, through licensure or whatever, that's really cool, except they don't necessarily have people to talk to. They don't have I cannot think of a case where they have their own sort of PLC, so to speak, or data team where they can talk about the cases. So the buck stops with them and they are working as an N of one in a school or a district, or maybe with a partner. But I rarely see kind of teams of literacy coaches being able to gather. The exception to that is in East Hartford and Hartford have teams of literacy coaches that gather, but they are thinking more about the leadership and coaching side. I don't see people getting together to look at student work or to analyze student data together or to think about how they might kind of change up what they're doing in intervention. So there's a real kind of opening and need for the ongoing support and networking that would help the buck not stop with whoever happens to be in your building, but have the buck stop with their whole community of folks who could kind of bring collective expertise to bear. So this is relatively recent. This is a study that was released this year, done a couple of years ago in Tennessee, and they were trying to compare like kids that qualified for intervention, if they just got core literacy instruction, if they got HDT here on the bottom stands for high dosage tutoring, which is usually um, uh, which is done in this case based on the core literacy instructions, their core curriculum. It's just extra help with what they're doing in class after school. And then tier two is its own intervention, or tier three, which is its own intervention. What is striking is that we see negative numbers. That basically the challenge that they're highlighting here is that there are smaller gains for the folks that are in the lower percentile, lower, like up below the 50th percentile. Um, and folks that are in tier three are actually losing ground. And so the analysis in this report that just came out, and the link is in the slides for it, so you can get the report, read the whole thing, get the context and everything. Kids that qualify for intervention, if we leave them alone, tend to grow unless they're below the 50th percentile. The only place that the kids below the 50th percentile are making any kind of progress, and this is really minimal progress, is in tier two. But if you notice, going to tier three doesn't. And the way that they've made sense of this is the coherence argument that the instruction that kids receive, especially younger children, needs to be coherent. We can't have a different program for tier two and a different program for tier three. Tier two was most similar to core instruction, but look at the jumps that kids are making when they just get help with core instruction. And that's not because they got more or better or more intense or more personalized. That's because they had more time with a one-on-one tutor in high dosage tutoring, working on the same thing. So the coherence piece. So I think there's sort of two stories here. One of them is the one-on-oneness is giving them the personalized explanations, practice, feedback that we're looking for. And the other is that it's coherent with what they're getting throughout the day. What's up, Leslie?
I wanted to clarify the coherence piece because I appreciate you naming that earlier on.
Mhm.
This study does honor that role of coherence.
This study is investigating it. So with high dosage tutoring, they used the same materials as the classroom. With tier two and tier three, they did not.
Got it. We're two and three aligned.
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Um, this is like not super different than the national study on RTI, which sort of led people to rebrand it as MTSS, but not actually change a lot of the practices. So in 2015, there was a national impact study on response to intervention, and it looked at whether people pulling kids out for tier two or tier three actually had a positive impact. And they found a couple of sort of highlight findings. There's a bunch of them, and again, I put the link to this report in the show notes, so to speak, in the notes for the slideshow. But in a couple of different ways, we're seeing that like tier two is hard to accomplish well and may not be the best place to focus your efforts. One is that one thing that we noted, which I have certainly seen firsthand, visiting different schools that are in different places with their MTSS RTI kind of like approach to things. That the differences between schools are significant. And so a blanket policy for a state is interpreted and enacted in dramatically different ways based on the infrastructure that's there. So, do you have coaches and how many? Do you have curriculum for tiers and what is it? Does your leadership understand and create space and provide professional support and all of those things? Like the local infrastructure really makes sort of sets and limits what a state policy can do. And because of that, it's not because people are ignoring it, it's just the way that it ends up coming out in places that have different infrastructure, like at the school level and the district level, really significantly changes the effectiveness of the program. Still, across the 100 and something of them that they were looking at just for tier two and tier three reading for grade one, most of the schools are actually generating a negative impact with tier two and tier three. So what you see at the bottom here, in this 2015 study, which was national, so this isn't about Connecticut in particular, it's, this is pre-pandemic, so there are pieces of this that like, meh, could be different. But the principle is sort of similar, and the one that just came out of Tennessee isn't telling us anything terribly different from that. So if you see, most of the schools have a negative impact, a handful of schools have a positive impact. And what that's showing us is that it is possible. There's a logic to tier two existing and working, but it certainly isn't a given just having sort of something that says we should be doing this stuff. What you
Rachel,
see?
I see John has a question. Sorry, I
Oh,
didn't mean
okay.
to.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead, please.
So the two questions I have are, one, do any of these studies
Sorry.
talk about the qualifications of the people doing the work at all?
Yeah.
A, and B, do they talk about the techniques? I mean, are they
Mhm.
using scientifically based materials? Are they
Yeah, dudes.
reading
Yeah, I
out
mean,
loud to the kids? It's
yeah, there's two things we know about this. The RTI impact study from 2015 that we're looking at right now does have in their appendices they tell you exactly how people were how people were trained, and there was a training requirement in order to participate because they wanted to make sure that like they were testing this model of intervention like on its merits. So they have, you know, the percentage of people that do have they tell you exactly who's certified and who isn't. And it's been state law since 2008. And before then, if you interpret it correctly, that any intervention has to be scientifically based reading research. So, like, at least at the level of like what schools are reporting that they use, yes, we that's sort of a given, a guarantee in this study and the one I showed on the earlier slide. What is not a given slash guarantee is like sort of evidence, it's like evidence-based with regard to doing the evidence-based program, marching through it, or evidence-based with regard to being responsive to the individual in front of you, like mediating, modifying the program for the individual. And that we don't have data on because nobody would admit that. And because there's been so much kind of emphasis on saying, you know, you have to do the program in this way, otherwise we won't know if it's the student's challenge or if it's the program that's not a good fit. And there also has been this sort of idea that like scientifically based programs should work for anybody that has a problem instead of, you know, reading the fine print in each of the programs and seeing that like they're really designed for a particular, each one of them for a particular profile of learner. And if you don't meet, if you're not a good fit for that program's not a good fit for you, you're better off in your classroom. If the program is a good fit for you, then you have a chance at acceleration. Or if you're working with a teacher who can make it a good fit for you, then you have a chance at acceleration. But if you are in a school where tier two means going on star reading by some estimations, not all, but by some estimations, is based on scientifically based reading research. It qualifies with like evidence for ESSA. It's totally fine for people to use. And it violates all of our assumptions about what tier two is supposed to be and do. So a school would be within the law in saying, oh, tier two, here is your computer program, but they wouldn't be within the spirit of the law, and they are not likely to have positive results. So we see a lot of cases where people are doing the right thing in terms of the letter of the law and not having good results. We also see up here in the top right that we're not you know, there's two reasons to have a system like this for intervention. One of them is to help kids move along through the grades at the pace and in the way that we think that they should. And the other is to identify kids early and earlier and more accurately for special education. And what you see in the top right is that there isn't really a significant change in the number of kids that are identified. So we're not catching many more, and we're also not filtering out many fewer. In fact, in some grades, we're getting a little bit fewer, and some grades we're getting a little bit more when you're an impact school. In this case, when you are doing these RTI programs as part of the study. So it's not really changing the flow of students to the door of special education, like to the moment of testing for that. They will probably have had a different experience leading up to it, but it isn't dramatically increasing or dramatically decreasing the number of kids that are referred at any given grade or age.
Rachel, I
Can I
see
ask?
that Representative Corpus has a question.
Thank you. What's up?
Thank you, Rep. Rader. Thank you for this. Is this, I must have missed this. This looks like this is November 2015 data.
The
Okay.
study was published in 2015, so probably data from the year before.
Okay, thank you. And is this Connecticut or nationwide?
Nationwide.
Okay, and is it saying that, is this bottom left saying that kids are better off without the interventions? It's actually doing harm?
Yep. Yes. Sorry, let me say that clearly. Yes.
Okay, so you see someone's
Yeah.
at my door. But 1 second, please. Sorry about that. But may I ask, is there any control for this with respect to, are these kids that are, I really understood your point that if it's integrated with the curriculum, it's very different than if it's not. Is there any
Sure.
control for this chart that we're looking at, whether that was in fact integrated into the classroom or not?
Integration wasn't a question in the 2015 study. My experience with this would say that integration is a piece of this, but it isn't the whole of it. You can still have well integrated, um, you can still have well integrated tier two and tier three, or coherent tier two and tier three. But if they are delivered in a large group, or if they are delivered by someone who doesn't know how to accelerate the learning of the students in front of them, then you get the same kind of result. It's sort of like saying, and this is one of the reasons there was a sorry, let me back up. Having it coherent is one logic, so to speak, of saying, like, let's make sure that this actually adds up at the end of the day. But there also has been a logic that people have been playing with that says, if classroom instruction hasn't worked for you, let's do it a different way. And there's room for that also too. And so, and that's where a tier three that is one-on-one can and probably should be different, because we've seen with extra time, with extra feedback, with extra practice, that this approach isn't providing enough structure, or isn't providing input in the right way, or isn't whatever it is for that particular learner. So the idea of coherence, I don't think it, in the report for this 2015 study, because it was a much bigger, it's a federally funded evaluation of the impact of RTI. So it's much longer. There's much more detail about it. I didn't see, although I can look again, I didn't see a section where they specifically looked for whether there was, what the alignment was between the scientifically based intervention and the scientifically based classroom instruction, except to say that they both qualified as scientifically based, which of course means lots of things, but is what it is.
So has there been any study like this to bring these numbers forward to the present? Anything more recent?
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
we just passed a bill where we emphasized more in tier two interventions.
yeah.
And
I
this
know,
is,
I'm thinking the same thing, Tina. This is what, because it's assumed the gold standard. And so here we are, right, sitting here listening to Rachel's expertise on this. And but that's why we're here, to learn and hear and consider.
So
I
I
do
think, sorry, yeah,
see
go ahead.
Senator McCrory has his hand up too. So I'm sure he is happy to join this conversation. Hi.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm kind of, this is amazing what I'm learning, and that's what I've been trying to say is, we all, all right, just a couple questions.
Yeah, please.
I'm hearing tier two intervention is not really doing much for our children, and in some cases, it's holding them back.
Yeah.
But you said tier three instruction is probably the best, is because it's one-on-one instruction. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes and no. So like these are in the
That's me. Go ahead.
in the in some studies, tier two is, so in the 2015 study, which is now 11 years old, like I get
Right.
that. The kids that are closest to the line, the kids that need sort of the least support, what some schools call bubble kids, do the worst in tier two. And what that's telling me is that if you can hang in classroom instruction, that is where you should be. If you're close to the cutoff, classroom instruction is going to be better for you.
Whole class instruction.
Whole class instruction. Yep.
Right.
Whole class, enhanced whole class instruction. So if you as a school leader decide that you want to invest in supporting your classroom teachers and providing more intensive reading support in upping the like in optimizing the reading development opportunities within the regular lessons. That is even more protective of kids needing help, and it helps with acceleration even more than tier two. Now, what this one's showing you down here is that when kids are like below the 50th percentile, they do well in tier two because they can't participate in tier one.
Right.
Like that, enhancing that classroom instruction, they're too far behind for it. And so you see some benefit, but it's not a huge benefit. Um, tier three, in this study, they didn't do as well. In the one from 10, 11 years ago, they did a little bit better. And my hunch is that it really depends who's delivering it and how.
Yes, I
Um,
agree with you. And
and so
let
it's
me ask you another
multivariate.
question.
It's
Yeah,
not just that it's small or just that it's aligned. It's small and aligned, and the person knows what they're doing.
right, and
And
because you use the term accelerate the learning.
yes,
If the person in front of the child can what does that mean for the layperson? Accelerate the learning.
it means it's not just that I understand how to teach this skill. It's that I understand how lots of different minds learn this skill. And therefore, I can teach it 7 ways till Tuesday. I'll figure out which one is going to be the best for you.
Right. Differentiation,
Hmm.
which is key to all this if you
Yeah.
want to actually move children forward.
Yes.
This is can you email me this? I
Yes,
mean, I
of
know it's
course.
an old study. Can you email me this?
Absolutely.
We're going
Yeah.
to make sure that everyone here gets all of this information sent to you with all of
Mhm.
the links. Absolutely.
But if I,
So I guess you could sum this up as it depends on the instructor. A lot of this success rate is largely depend on the quality of the instruction
I just want to see you.
visual
I'm
in the
sorry.
class.
Yeah. It depends a lot on the person doing it. And I mean, this is one of these things where like there isn't a bottom line. There's like three braided bottom lines. One bottom line is if kids can hang in their regular classroom instruction, we should focus all of our attention and resources in making that the most optimal that it can be. If
Right.
kids can't make progress in their classroom because they're too far behind or because their learning situation internally or externally means they're like not with it in that
Hmm.
situation, then being in a smaller group with a human who knows what they're doing and has materials that are coherent. Those are sort of the one, two, three, right? Like all of those things need to be true for tier two um, to be successful. And if that is the case, then if somebody is still struggling, going down to one-on-one in that kind of a scenario with someone who has even more kind of tricks up their sleeves around how do I make this work for you? And the other piece of tier three might be that they meet more often during the week instead of 2 or 3 times, maybe they do it every day.
Hmm.
Then the logic of this like 3-2-1 thing actually works. The
Gotcha.
logic is disrupted though in many cases, and so part of it is that we need to have really expert people in there to deliver it. The other part is we need leaders that have hired these people, that have created schedules where those people can get to the right kids at the right time, and that have provided them with not just materials, but guidance for how to use the materials. Folks that are not sure about how this whole reading thing works are like, follow the program or we're going to
Right.
get in trouble.
So
And
let me ask
follow
you
the
real
program is not really how we do intervention.
right.
And I realize there's like some diciness in saying that, but like if you have a student who is not well met by classroom instruction, we know we have to do something individual. And there's a contrast there between like follow the program, help the individual. And leaders do send mixed messages about that to their people,
You mentioned
understandably.
something. Can I ask you real quick? Because I came on a little late. You mentioned something about there's a difference between coaching and instruction. I heard you. What can you
Yeah,
explain that again? Because
sure.
I know that coaching is a totally different from an
Right.
instruction,
Hmm.
and we're about to spend a whole lot of money to hire much more coaching, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right way we should spend the money. So talk to me about or
Yeah.
talk to us about the difference between coaching, which is basically giving instruction, in my opinion, to the
To the
teacher,
teachers. Right.
and instruction where we need to get the accelerating the learning and all the other
Yeah.
components that go along with this. Go ahead,
Right on.
and
Okay.
I'll be
So
quiet.
no, please. I think I brought this up in the sense that like folks that are working directly with children who have reading difficulties don't have a lot of community where they can challenge each other and help each other out. There aren't a lot of networks of interventionists or of reading specialists who provide intervention. There are some networks of coaches, and I don't want to like let that go because a lot of people are hired as literacy coaches or reading coaches. And this is one of the things that is challenging in Connecticut. We have 2 layers of certification. So you can get certified as a remedial reading teacher. You can work directly with children. You can get certified as a literacy coach. You can work with adults and with children. And depending on the size of the district, they might hire one or the other. Like, are we going to have a team that the coach supervises, or are we going to have one person and it could be either one? The challenge there is that we have a shortage of both of those in terms of people in the state that have these certifications. And so schools for a long time have been working around them because there's nobody to hire. And so we just rename it something. We call it a reading tutor, a reading tailor, a reading schmaler, or whatever. And they hire somebody who they think will do a good enough job, or someone who is trained to be an instructional coach but doesn't have deep knowledge in literacy. And
Mm,
so they do generic teaching strategies that don't take advantage of the research base in understanding literacy development. And they can put something together or they can monitor computer work, but that is different from, um, it's different.
right.
So part of this is like we haven't made the investment in making that kind of certification accessible. Like it's a 2-year, $30,000 program if you do it right. And
Right.
if you do it fast, it's like a 2-year, $10,000 program every Saturday. And if you don't do it, I get it because that's a lot. Do you know what I mean? So like there just
Yeah.
are a lot of, and I've designed, redesigned, and evaluated these programs, and we can make them shorter and better and whatever. But at the moment, uh, educators in Connecticut don't have a ton of opportunities to deepen that kind of expertise for working in small groups or one-on-one with kids um, in the area of reading in particular.
Thank you.
So there's that.
Leslie and then Rep Corpus.
Thank you, Representative Rader. I do appreciate you naming the importance and the complicated nature of scheduling. And I just want to thank you for naming that because that when the rubber hits the road, that it's not always ideal scenarios that are prioritizing kids. So
Yep.
my question isn't on that. My question is a follow-up on, I heard you say for tier 3, human is better.
Oh, yeah.
Curious if the study breaks out human in person or human kid in school, human on a laptop.
Yeah, great question. The 2015 study didn't because I don't think we were asking that question pre-2020. The later one didn't because they controlled for that in the
So they
2020. They were all in person.
they were
Even the
all in person.
tutoring, even the
Okay.
high dosage tutoring
Okay.
was in person, but it was done by what they call minimally trained tutors, which means they go through like basically like an orientation and they're kind of doing more of whatever happened in the classroom. So, and that makes an impact. Like, the other thing here is like part of this is we have to be really careful and scientific and make sure that we're putting kids in front of experts in order to make this work. But also, we can see tremendous growth in reading with things that don't require that expertise, like having this extra time with an adult who cares about you, looks you in the eye, and works on what you're working on in your classroom with you if you can. And it reminds me of how like summer reading programs where they just let you pick books you'd like to read and then ask you at the end if you've read them outperform summer school every single time we've measured it. So there's expertise if we're trying to do this really directly. And then there's the reality that in a high dosage tutoring situation, you have a lot of affective factors that are working in your favor. You've got you're assigned to your tutor who's your buddy. And they often are they get to spend time kind of building real it's like an extra adult who cares about you and cares about your reading. They have more opportunities for discussion and feedback. So you're getting like 4 times the amount of adult input when it's, 3-on-1 or 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 than it would be in the classroom. So part of it is, yeah, if they can hang at all with the classroom curriculum, we want to have them in there and or supported in it. as much as possible. And if they're missing something that means they can't participate well in their regular classroom, we need someone who really knows how to fill in that gap and speed up the learning trajectory, not just catch up, but speed up. Because usually when I get pulled into districts, it's because they have this problem where kids have been in tier two and they never qualify to get out of tier two, or they've been in tier three and they never qualify to get out because they're keeping pace, but they're not accelerating. So they still qualify for intervention after first grade and second grade and third grade. And they call me because I come in because there's too many kids in intervention in fourth grade before they change to, or in fifth before they change. Whenever they're going to switch buildings, people get really nervous, with good reason. And in some cases, folks have a strict policy there that says if you've been in for however many months or however much time, we send you for testing for special ed. And they tend to get a lot of bounce back, like this kid doesn't qualify, keep them. But they don't know what else to do with them. So their kids are in a holding pattern instead of in a pattern where interventionists or reading specialists are trying different things, finding what's optimal, talking with their colleagues and figuring out if I don't know it, does somebody else know it? And like figuring out the optimization for this kid so that they can accelerate. We have pretty good evidence that everybody can accelerate, but fit matters. And fit doesn't happen with every program or with every person, which is why we need you need to be part of a group that is working on this. It's really difficult to do it as
The adults need to be part of a group,
Yes,
you're saying.
yep, mhm.
Yes, okay. Key, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Rep Corpus.
I was just wondering, the data that you showed us from 2015, it sort of wasn't even close. I mean, there were
No.
81
Right.
for which these interventions harmed, and I think 38 for which they helped, and then people that were neutral.
Yeah.
So why is it that after like data like that came out, the state of the art in the educational field didn't suddenly shift to, okay, we're either doing tier two interventions wrong and we fix them, or these interventions don't work at all? Like why is the state of the art still that tier two interventions work? I guess is my question.
There's a long answer to that, but the short answer to that is because nobody interrupted the logic behind it. It still makes sense to people, right? If the whole group doesn't work, we'll give you a small group. If the small group doesn't work, we'll give you one-on-one. It still made sense to people to use the same kinds of universal screeners. It still made sense to people to use the same criteria for what counts as high quality instructional material and then scientifically based interventions. Um, there are certainly districts that I've worked with that are more kind of mature and advanced in their application of this. I mean, it did go through a rebranding, but at the end of the day, we're still doing tiers. And honestly, like the 2008, the IDEA law that kind of introduced this doesn't have the word tier in it at all. One of the first conferences for practitioners to try and understand how to implement IDEA in 2008 put up that triangle that you're probably familiar with like tier three is teeny and put that triangle up on a slide and everybody went, oh, okay. And we've all been doing it since then as if that's the only way that we could do it. Um, that's been a challenge for middle and high school because the infrastructure doesn't match, particularly in high school. I don't know of a high school that's doing all three tiers. They're lucky if they've got a second tier of support. Support in high school just looks like we will put you in a different level class, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about earlier on. And because there just isn't, like, when we think about the scheduling and the staffing, there just isn't a way to do it any better. A lot of high schools let it be. The way that they do it when they're successful and the way that really highly successful MTSS programs do it in other places, and once in a while I see it here too, they have the structure to do, excuse me, tier two and tier three, but they invest their staff in push-in as much as possible. So their reading interventionists camp out in kindergarten and assist with the instruction in there, which minimizes the group size and maximizes differentiation and lets them see early and often who is getting it, not getting it, and catch them up so that they have many fewer cases in first grade. Because the other reason that the other way that the logics of this system get violated is when they just have too many kids in them. We would do a really great tier two instruction if I didn't have to do 17 kids. I could do it with 5. Or I could do it if there was only a handful and I could fit them into my schedule. Like, so even if we're just minimizing the volume, we're setting everybody up for more success.
Rachel,
So
can I ask you a
yeah.
question?
Mhm.
Thank
We
you.
hear a lot talk about the Mississippi model and how successful that was. What
Mhm.
I need to hear you say what
Yeah.
exactly within the Mississippi model would that actually made it successful,
Okay,
so
two
to
things.
speak.
The first thing, which I think is like an interesting positive thing, is they invested in coaches within each system. They invested in the coaching ability, the knowledge, and the coaching ability, because you can know but not coach somebody. But so the knowledge and the coaching ability of people in the building. So they had contextual knowledge, local networks who could support the classroom teachers,
Okay.
which is not super different than what I'm seeing in some of our more successful like historically successful districts where we have the people with the most expertise are in classrooms more, so that fewer and fewer people need to come out. So one piece of it is just purely that they are investing in like local structures for ongoing teacher support all the time.
Okay.
The second is when you have a system that is total chaos, by which I mean there isn't really leadership for what instruction should look like, there isn't really leadership for how we should analyze, there isn't really leadership for doing any of this right.
Right.
And you've got a revolving door of first year teachers, and you've got and we're talking, and you've got water that you can't drink, and you've got like we're talking about Mississippi is a really different scenario in many cases, not all, but in many cases. If you've got basically chaos, then having a structure for the first time means you get stable for the first time and everything gets a lift. So it looks like a miracle because
Right.
it was a mess.
Right.
In terms of people having what they need, the same people being in the same school every year, having materials, having classrooms that don't have asbestos, having enough chairs in the classrooms. We're talking about once that gets stabilized, and it was stabilized by a huge investment of private funding. We stabilize chaos and we see kids learning for the first, like making progress for the first time. In
Gotcha.
Connecticut, we're not in many cases, and there are exceptions, there's always exceptions, but in many cases, when I look across the state and the schools that I visit, we're not stabilizing chaos. We're making improvements in systems that in many cases have run the way they run for a very long time. Not by accident, not because they've had a different principal every 6 months for the last 10 years, but they continue to produce the results that they have been producing. And they'd like to interrupt that, which is different in some cases than like, all right, nothing, we
So
haven't had leadership at all. Like, tell me a direction for the first time. We're going to see the lift that you see that looks like a miracle. If they had been running, and I think this is what we see in some of the other states that have tried to copy Mississippi, if they'd been running, you can sometimes see a bump. However, the current emphasis on these sort of prescribed, you must follow this thing the way that it was written by these outside people, or
right.
you're not good at your job. Fear about reading whole novels because we got book bans here and we've got core curriculum here. Like all of these pieces that are kind of hamstringing educators from doing what they need to do and know how to do,
Mhm.
are also minimizing some of the results that we hope to see across the country from folks
So
that are copying Mississippi.
So it sounds like we can't honestly in Connecticut implement we can implement part of the Mississippi model when we can go in and actually go and work with the instructors, the first part you said. But the second
Mhm.
part is where we're not so crazy where we don't have water and all those things. We're different. So I don't so when I hear the Mississippi model, I don't think that's gonna work for us the way it
I
worked
don't
for
either.
Mississippi.
I don't
Yeah,
either.
I know.
I don't think, and I think it's part of it's the, there are um, a certain group of folks and a certain set of vendors and a certain set of policy priorities benefit when we follow Mississippi. When we follow Mississippi, it says teacher ed is unimportant if we do these things. We follow Mississippi, it says buy this program and that's all we're going to need. And then all of a sudden, a small set of vendors is guaranteed every
Right,
contract for this state and 15 others. Like
right,
there's too much. If it seems like it's too good to be true, it's because it is. But that isn't to take away from what they accomplished in Mississippi. They
right.
cleaned up a lot that had not been clean, and they did that with a massive massive infusion of private foundation funding. So like and that isn't gonna last. It isn't gonna always be there for them. It doesn't change the levels of poverty. It doesn't change the quality of the teacher preparation. It doesn't change the ongoing funding for these programs. So it gave them a boost a generational boost that
Right.
we should be celebrating. But we have a different set of infrastructure to work with. And
Right.
sometimes our infrastructure is broken. We can find a building that really needs support because it feels like chaos to the people working in there. I don't know if we can find a district where that's the case. And we certainly can't find, certainly couldn't say that about all of our districts.
Okay. Okay.
I raised my hand because I want to be polite to everyone else because I have actually a couple of questions too. Um, Thank you for speaking to the Mississippi model because it's like this thing that's floating around in Connecticut and in the ed, we're hearing
Yeah.
it as Senator referenced. And I've talked to other literacy experts like you, and they've all really had hesitations around thinking it's the golden ticket. So I'm thankful
Mhm.
that you kind of put that out there. And also, just in the last several years, I just finished 8 years on my board of ed. And
Thank
when
you
this
for
whole right to read emphasis came to Connecticut and districts
Yeah.
were investing tons of money in these programs. And I don't want to disparage it, but I remember feeling one shoe doesn't fit all
Yeah.
feet. And so I was really worried. And a lot of districts were already doing it right. Right.
Right.
And kind of
Yep.
had the opportunity to prove that and show
Mhm.
that around literacy instruction. So, um, but it was a behemoth of an effort. And
Yeah.
so in the context of that investment, whether it's
Mhm.
good or bad,
Mhm.
because districts have really, invested in this, in terms of all that you shared today, and the other thing, sorry, I have a very split thought process, but I want to
Sure.
connect the acceleration piece too, because I remember post-COVID,
Yep.
when we were talking about instruction in the Board of Ed and with our district leadership, and curriculum instruction, they were talking about we're accelerating everybody. Like this is kind of the model we're taking now because
Sure.
we understand, especially elementary level, children
Yeah.
have just lost so much ground. So we're not going to
Mhm.
pick and parse apart who needs,
Right.
we're going to accelerate everybody. And we're
Mhm.
going to help you capture, to your point, the kids. So that model you speak of as being the most successful is kind of what we did just by the force of nature of what post-COVID and getting these kids back in the classroom and off a screen. And it seems to have been very successful for us. But in terms of that investment that
Mhm.
pretty much every district has made or had already made and is modeling
Please
that,
enter your password.
how do we then integrate what you're teaching us around, I'm not going to say the negative aspects of tier two, but we were handed this task within our Bergen Commission to kind of look at this and
Mhm.
really sell it to boards of education and really emphasize the coaching interventionist model.
Mhm.
But as Tina's sitting here smiling, I see her smile because it's like, we might have to rethink this whole thing. And so um,
Yeah.
knowing
I
that
think,
that investment districts have already made, is it
yeah.
useful? Is it not? And
Yeah. Yeah.
then
Yeah.
how can we apply that to kind of
Mhm.
maybe create something different than what we're recommending?
Awesome. So if I was talking to a principal who had no policy influence at all, they just have to live in the thing. What I would be talking with them about is empowering the educators who are already in their buildings. Um, by investing in like structures for ongoing expertise development around literacy, not and and connecting folks with each other for sort of the one-on-one things. And that would look like sort of when I think about the policy strategy here, like we could have gone one way or another and we copied a bunch of other states and did this whole right to read thing. And basically this right to read thing is like more prescriptive, more control, fewer options for schools. That turns into more prescriptive, more controlled, fewer options for teachers, which turns into more for students. And so if you don't fit, and a lot of what we're thinking about here when we've got kids in tier two and tier three is the fit between the student and the instruction. If it's not a fit, and this also happens within special education, like why are kids not exiting special education at the rate that we want them to? Because the instruction there isn't a fit for them either. And, just because it's delivered by a special educator doesn't mean in many cases it means it's less expert than it might have been if it was delivered by somebody else who has a specialty in whatever they're struggling with. And when it comes to reading, when we think about what's the evidence we see of like where is the student most successful and are we building on their strengths? Sometimes it's the program that is scientifically scientific. Sometimes it's the program that's holding us back from building on their strengths and letting them accelerate, because that's how acceleration happens. So I've been talking with districts that their MTSS program is really mature. They are supporting their classroom teachers in systematic ways. And then we end up working within special education on the same things to the extent that somebody's in there for something related to reading or that reading could help them in some kind of a way. So with the policy strategy so far has been like prescribe and control. The opposite of that is support and develop. So wherever you have control to do that, you can do that, but it feels like you're cheating. It feels like you're saying, I know you're supposed to teach this program, but I want you to follow the learner. Shh, don't tell anyone. It feels like we're saying, we just spent $1 bazillion on this new high quality instructional material that is supposed to fix things for us. But I'm going to tell you that it doesn't give our kids enough time to practice. It doesn't give you enough time to work in small groups. It doesn't include any time for writing, and writing is going to help you a lot with your reading. Like, it really requires a principal saying, I know that this was handed to you as a prescription, and I'm going to tell you to massage it and do it in a way that makes more sense. We've got to have folks that are available to help principals make those calls, and we've got to have folks that are available to help teachers think through what's a better idea than what's on this piece of paper. They need to have the freedom to ask that question, and then they need to have people that can support them in asking that question and answering it effectively. If I'm talking to policymakers, so exciting. Thank you for being here. There are ways that we can expand, not change, not soften, but expand what is possible, so that people are not getting the message that the state is here to control you into submission. But instead, the state is here to support and develop your ability to do it better than you've ever done it before. Everybody can learn, and some people can learn a lot in this area. And that's not because they haven't paid, it's because they've paid attention to other things. One of the first things that principals told me when they first realized they had to get a new reading curriculum, like that year that they had to buy it, or within the time period that they had to buy it, was I planned to do a whole revamp of STEM this year, and now I can't. Now I have to do reading again, even though I just did it, kind of a thing. So it's not for lack of interest or expertise or trying. In many cases, it was bad timing. But what we need to have happen is this support and development of people who are already there. I mean, I know that there are strategies out there of sending coaches in. We've never seen it work. I can't find a study where external coaching made a difference. It's the smaller, partly because of trust. Coaching and trust go hand in hand. If you don't have it, you don't have coaching. Partly because it's incidental conversations that tend to move the needle rather than the performative conversations like an evaluation or a workshop. And partly because the local infrastructure really matters. Yeah, that's a great idea, but doesn't work in my schedule. Wonderful, but I don't have that program. Like, all of these, being immersed in the local context makes a huge difference interpersonally and academically. So investing in the knowledge and the leadership of the people that are there in the building and connecting them to each other seems to be a way to do that. But if that's gonna work, people have to have permission. And I think for like unintended consequence of this policy trend, which is like 40 something states are doing this kind of a thing, is the idea that like schools don't know how to pick materials, the state's going to have to do it for them. Teachers don't know how to teach lessons, the materials are going to do it for them. And this sort of like turn off your brain, do this thing instead mentality is pushing us in the wrong direction. We have to have an invitation to say, not what's best for kids, but it's your job to find out what's best for kids. Here's some good stuff that you can use to get there. Not here's good stuff, what you chose was bad, which is sort of
Thank you.
the message.
I hear you. I see, Ray, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick comment. KTS was unable to make this meeting, but it's refreshing to hear the research because it so much reinforces everything we're hearing from our members who are teaching at these grade levels, that they're unable to meet the student where they are. Some of them actually tell us stories about having to be defiant in order to meet students where they are. So everything you're hearing, we're hearing from members on the ground. So I just wanted to reinforce that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Quick question. Rachel, are you local?
Yeah. I'm
Where?
at UConn.
She's at
I-
UConn, Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm at UConn. I live in
So-
Farmington. I have 2 kids in elementary school here.
Okay, so I need to meet with you.
Yes.
And
I would
I'm,
love
I'm,
to.
I'm gonna pick
That'd be
out a
great.
few people on the education committee. We need to meet again. So
Great.
how can
Yeah.
can you reach out to my aide, Kelly? I want to get your contact information. I want to invite some people. We need to have another conversation
Thank
soon.
you. I'd love that.
Okay.
Senator.
So we should,
Oops.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll connect you guys. And there's another person I think might be good to bring into the conversation as well. I'm thinking of Jen in case she's interested, but yes, so happy to connect you guys.
No, you know what? I'm gonna do this because I'm so big. I'm gonna put the responsibility on you, Rep Raider, to get us together.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll
All right.
reach out to you. We'll coordinate something and let me know whoever else you might want to be at that
Yes.
meeting. And we can do that.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's great. Tina's raising her hand. I know. I think our whole entire committee would like to be part of this, but we'll start small and then we can share information because I'm so glad this connection got made because I had my own personal hesitance around this work because I've just been doing my own research on this and knowing Rachel's colleague, Jen Scoggin, who's a dear friend and a literacy expert. And much like Rachel has studied a lot of this, we had a very deep conversation around it. And she said, happy to connect you and I'm happy to come and talk about tier 2 interventions, but I might tell you things that are going to kind of shake things up a lot. And I'm like, that's why we're here. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. We passed this massive legislation last year. Amazing. And now let's actually see if what we've recommended is let's not just buy into it because we did good work there, but something as critical as this, we're going to have to need to reconsider and and not put our blinders on. And so I'm grateful that you've been able to do that for a lot of us here. And I see John has another question and I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time because we're a little over an hour, but go ahead, John.
I'll be brief because we're missing one of the more significant elephants in the room, and that is how many students are you getting out of your group, out of your program every year? I mean, in my world, we find that kids are getting sent. There aren't people to do it. And when there are people to do it, they are people who are substantially inadequately trained to do the work. I mean, that's what my families see.
Yeah, 100%. There was a shortage in this area when I moved to Connecticut 16 years ago, and the programs have shrunk, not grown. So that is a big piece of it. And in keeping our program alive, I have done studies of other states and how they do it, and I've done cost comparisons and time comparisons. In part, I think a chunk of it is that the information and the training that folks need is intensive. We need to work with students together and talk all about it. The clinical class that we teach is where people make the most growth as individuals, as professionals. It's the class that I see people sort of changing lanes from being classroom teachers to being like a clinical expert in what they see and what they can do. It does take time. I think when we make the program shorter than a year, they don't work. We tried. And I think that it is largely inaccessible. Our program is pretty traditional in that it is sort of over 18 months and it is 21 credits like the state requires. And so that's almost a master's degree. And so that is super expensive. So for a practicing teacher to say, I'm going to take my evenings and my weekends and do this for 2 years and pay $30,000 to $40,000 for it is a really significant ask. And so we don't have a huge number of people putting their hand up and saying, hey, I'd like to do this. In fact, part of our program is made up of teachers from Massachusetts because our timing works well for them. We've tried to make
Is your program a master's program or is it what kind of program is it?
It's a graduate something. So it's a master's or a 6th year And the difference has to do with whether you'll qualify for financial aid or not. But it's 30 graduate credits. Like if you
Okay.
already have a master's, you can do it as a 6th year. If you don't have one, you know, that kind of a thing. And
Gotcha.
that's how you get the state license for reading, for the reading interventionist, reading specialist kind of a role.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't think it takes 21 credits, but it does take significant time. It does take supervised clinical work, and we can do that in lots of cases. There are models of doing this, particularly with kindergarten teachers, where we go in and all the kindergarten teachers in a district get this training over a year, and they work with their own students as their case study students. And then we do see a significant change in how prepared the kids are in first grade um, and how well the kids do, how many of them actually need any intervention later on.
How many students you have in your program currently?
11.
What?
Yeah.
This is where we need to be investing our money. You know,
Really?
talk about, I shouldn't,
Mhm.
can't keep my
Come
mouth
on, say it.
But I'm just saying, you know, this is the point of these things, right? Is to refocus and reconsider. And, you know, in one of the tasks we have in our subcommittee is to encourage boards of education to be investing in this. And what that means is they that's saying professional development. But what I'm hearing from you is if you don't have the experts first, there's nobody in the building to be doing
Right.
that. And
Right.
develop, I love this idea of kindergarten teachers using their children, you know, doing their clinical work in the classroom. Like, how practical is that and how exciting is that?
Yes.
And how good is it for the kids too? You know, so to your point, I think it's yeah, we've got to open up our eyes and kind of consider different ideas. But the investment we're really trying to make, you know, in education, we have another bill to kind of create opportunity in certain specialties of education that are in dire need. And the senator knows this, and Rep. Corpus knows this, you know, around math and science and special
Mhm.
education. But this could be another component of that. So, but Leslie, I see you have a question.
Yeah, well, just a comment. I want to name that I think part of what is driving teacher, I'm not a researcher. I'm a union leader, Rachel. So part of what I'm seeing as a union leader, listening to
Mhm.
members, is part of what's driving burnout, depletion, and that revolving door of first year teachers that you named,
Mhm.
is the whiplash that we get from the constantly changing programs. So I guess I just want to name that like
Yeah.
teachers very much want time, tools, and training to do
Mhm.
good work. That is what we want. But when we get it every year, different time,
Mhm.
different tools, different training, it's not meeting our needs. And then kids, as a result, aren't getting the high quality instruction. So I think, this is exciting to be in this group and hear this research and see policymakers say, oh, wow, we have to pause. But I guess I just want to pause the pause to make sure that we don't end up quickly turning only to then
Mhm.
quickly turn again. I'm not implying that
No,
is
yeah.
going to happen, but let's remember
We'll take 'em.
that, like the we call it in New Haven the one more thing factor. The one more there's no other room to add the one more thing. So like if we're going to do something new, let's take something off that we know doesn't work. And I just say that as somebody who sees the burnout and knows that we need more than 11 people in a high quality program at UConn. So what are we doing so our high school kids don't see burnout teachers and our high school kids
Mhm.
see a path to the profession in a way that is going to help us build a teaching core for the 2030s and the 2040s.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, no, I'm sitting here thinking about that. I don't think we want to throw everything out. I think it's like I said earlier, like we've made these huge investments in these prescriptive things, but it doesn't mean we throw that away. It's just how
Mhm.
can we marry that to what we're learning here today with what you said about the actual instructors, the human beings in the building, the ones sitting with our children. How can we be more thoughtful about that investment? And I will just say, like, as everyone, I'm shocked at the lack of success at those 50% and up kids, you know, in the tier two, tier three, you know, you know, that every child is critical, but that just blew my mind. So, and the high dosage tutoring, it was really interesting to see that in the kids who were just on the cusp, but that was the thing that really made such a significant difference. So it's like we have to share this information. And I mean, that's what we're doing here today with the 16 of us. But we will be sure to continue this. And
Yeah,
I see
just
Rep. Corpus. Yes.
Just a
Sorry, go ahead,
request, and
Sen.
it's fast. Because Senator Berthel had that bill that we passed out of committee yesterday, I'm just making the
Yeah.
request that he be integrated into the conversations about whether high dosage tutoring works, et cetera.
Yeah.
And also, I'm really glad you said that, Leslie, because what you said, because this is why these kinds of commissions are valuable. Like, we don't have the pressure of the session beating down on us. Like, we've got to, bill, yes or no on the bill. So we have a little bit of time to think. And it doesn't mean we're now going to flip the other way and say, forget all these tier 2 interventions. No, it's the
Right.
beginning of a thought process. So thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Senator?
I my last comment is just what Raider said. You would have thought that those kids that were in that 50 percentile just needed a little more. Those we call those bubble kids,
Right.
and actually we are hurting the bubble kids, and you would have thought those ones will be able to get over the top, right, with
Right.
this into tier 2 intervention, and actually we're hurting them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sad because it doesn't have to be this way.
No.
All right.
Well, I am so grateful for this conversation. I actually postponed my 3 o'clock constituent meeting because I texted her and said, I've got something really important happening and I'm going to have to reschedule because this is so valuable. And I'm so grateful, Rachel, that you quickly made time for us. And I'm grateful everyone switched their schedules to be here on a Thursday at 2 o'clock. It worked out. Feels very clandestine. So I will make sure that everyone gets the research that Rachel shared today. And Senator McCrory and Rep. Corpus, I will follow up with kind of getting us, I'll put you in touch with Rachel and we'll see if we can do a follow-up, legislator kind of thing to kind of see where we should go with what we've learned today and continue the conversation. And to the rest of the committee members, we have our next meeting scheduled. I think it's a little soon after this one because we pushed it off, but I'm going to look at that again. And maybe based on what today, the development of today, we might frame it a little more on this conversation so we don't feel like we just cut it off at an hour because I think it's super valuable to the work we've been tasked with.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's smart. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. I'm sure we could talk about this for 2 or 3 more hours, but I know everyone has really busy schedules and we will follow up with all of that information. So look for the emails. They might come from Caroline here, who's my aide, Henderson, who's helping out today. And so if you see an email from her or me, just know we'll be very clear in the subject matter as to what's in the email. Okay, and as always, please reach out with any questions, either myself or Leslie, and we will meet again soon. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
Thank
care.
you.
And Rachel, I will follow up with you.